G'day. Hot day in the shed today, so I don't feel like doing terribly much, but today I'm continuing on with the indicator, universal indicator. So I've made the push-pull rod thing, clevisy bit. I've finished machining the aluminium main body parts. So we're making progress. The next episode should be doing the flappy paddle thing and a couple of cotters and some minor bits and pieces and trying it out. But in the meantime, here's a bit more machining. I'm setting up to cut the 30-degree angle across there, and the way I've done it is I've got a parallel over there and then I've got my 30-degree square, I guess you'd call it, and I'm just jiggling that so that I get a decent fit up there. And then because of the line I've scribed there, which is measured up from this base here, I'm just going to nibble my way down to that, and that should give me my 30-degree angle. I can then use that edge as a locator and drill holes and all those sorts of things that I need to do off that corner, but that's how I'm going to do that. So that's for this one, and also for the other one I'll do something very similar. Bit of a bodge here. As you saw, I've faced that off. I've drilled the hole, and then I need to put the hole in for my half cotter. Normally what I'd do is I'd put that in there, then drill the hole. Can't in this case because I was clamping on those surfaces. So what I've done instead is I've got a 3/8 rod, and I've gone along with my rule and marked basically the edge of it. I've then gone down, in this case 2.5 millimeters for the screw, and put the screw hole in, and then I've done the counterbore for the actual cotter itself. If you can't do it in the order that I usually do it in, there are other ways around it. It's perfectly all right. It's just it's a bit annoying not to be able to do it the way I usually do it. To make the central pivot bit, I've got to put a couple of flats on here, and I also have to put in some other holes and things. So rather than set up a dividing head to do all that sort of stuff, I'm going to use my hexagon block collet chuck thingy, and you've probably seen that before. However, you probably haven't seen this. This is a block I made up. It's got the profile of a 12-point socket in it, and so I can, using a central clamp, and I've got space for keys even though that I haven't got them fitted here, I can clamp that down onto the table, and that will mean that this 6-sided block becomes a 12-sided, because everything is set up so that it'll do 12. So I can do a 6-sided thing, I can do a 4-sided thing, I can do all that sort of stuff with the 12-sided block there. This piece on the back unbolts, and I can put a piece of my strap kit in here that'll go down the bore of this, so that I can use that as a depth stop. I can also turn this around and just use this as a depth stop on here, or I can take it off if I don't need that. So just a bit of something that I made up. It's one of the few times you'll see me using a bolt on a clamp set, and that's just because that's what fits. But yes, another way to put or make up hex or square stock, if you just have the hex block and don't want to buy the square block. As you saw, I've put some flats in here and I've got a hole through there. The next thing I'm going to do is drill an 8mm hole through there and then part this off. Because what I want to do is, as you might just be able to make out from this part of the drawing, I want to put that through there with some Loctite and let that set, let that go off. Then I'm going to put a couple of small roll pins, I think, in there just to lock those rods in place. Because I find that Loctite works lots better in this sort of thing when it's got some physical restraint to it as well. But what that means I can then come along and do is drill down in here, and I'll know that this rod is basically coaxial. It'll be, you know, completely in line. If you recall with this version, I put a bit of threaded, well, it's actually a little bit of screw, but I cut it off and turned it into a bit of a studding, and I'm not quite sure how well those are lined up. So this is an attempt to find another way around that problem. It should work, so we'll see how we go. But I didn't want to completely finish this part because then I've got a rod going through, and I may, because I've got holes there, I may kick the parts out of alignment. So I'm going to leave that solid, wait for that to dry, put the pins in, then drill down and do the rest of the stuff in there. I need to explain about this bit. When I looked through the footage I had, I realised that I'd skipped a spot and hadn't gone to here, so back to this one. There are two countersunk screws here, and that locates this piece with the bush in it repeatably, precisely, because the cones on the countersunks will help centralise things. So the idea is that instead of, with the previous version, I had two basically stalks which are held on with a screw. Here what I've done is I've gone for a solid piece with a bush on one side and a bush on another piece here, and I'll be able to take that off to put my plunger piece in. Okay. However, to get that to work, I had to get those holes lined up. Now, my plan was originally to clamp that in the vise, have 4.5 holes top and bottom there, and then come in with my ream and do one, and then be able to go down and do the other. But I had a lot of trouble getting that to line up. I could get it square, you know, to the table that way, but trying to get it fore aft was difficult, and it took a couple of goes to try and get that lined up. I reamed through and I still wasn't terribly happy with the result. So eventually I went to this. This is a long series 5mm drill. So these holes were pretty much to size anyway, it's just they weren't quite lined up. So by running the drill through the holes there, I was able to get those, it's just long enough to get those two lined up. So as a result, I've got a 5mm piece of rod that'll go through there. Now, some of this rod's got a few dings on it, and I'm not vouching for the straightness of it all. End result is I can put in this part, and that'll slide back and forth, you know, reasonably well. I'll put some when I'm closer to final assembly, I'll put some graphite powder on there just to give it more lubrication. But that's basically what I didn't show you there, but I did. Okay, I've put the features in here to locate the dial indicator. I've still got to make up the half cotters. I've drilled my holes in there. And that was a little bit more of an effort than I thought it would be, because I had a blunt drill bit, so I had to sharpen that up. But you know, with stainless steel, it'll rub, it'll get hot, it'll destroy an edge, so you want to keep it cool. So I had some WD-40 in there as a coolant, and you want to keep a nice constant pressure on it. You don't want it to chance to just rub in the same spot. However, I got there, so that's all good. I've got a roll pin here. Now that's 12 thick, and this is a 20mm roll pin. I could just put that in there and then cut off the end, but what I'm going to do instead, because I'm a mean bugger, is cut that in half. Now, to stop that flying away, here's a trick I use, is to basically put a bit of masking tape around the object that I'm cutting. I'll hang on to that with some pliers, cut that with the angle grinder, and rather than this flying off and getting lost somewhere, the bit of tape should hold it there and keep it in one place. I can then separate that out, pop that in, and everything will be as planned. Another thing too, while putting roll pins in, I find it's easier if you use a pair of pliers or vice grips or something to squash the roll pin in. Start hammering on top to get it started at least. But that just helps getting in. I've tried it without doing that, and I end up with the roll pin going all over the place because the diameter of the hole and the diameter of the pin means it is an interference fit. Now what I've done here too is these are probably about 9.5 long. This is 12 thick. So what I've done is I've got myself one of my pin punches. These are a 2mm roll pin. This is a 1.5 pin diameter punch, and I've just punched that down a little bit, and what that'll do is it takes away any rough edges and just gives you a slightly nicer look. So just something to bear in mind. If you've got a shorter roll pin, it doesn't matter, just punch it down, and you know that rod is 5, the roll pin is 9, so I've still got some decent engagement on there anyway. I'm just about to take out the middle of that. I started off by putting about a 4.5mm hole through there. That's a 6mm cutter, and that's just so that I could plunge through that with this. It's a slot drill, but I prefer not to. So I've drilled a hole. I'm now going to go down there. That'll take a little bit of material off the outside, and then I'm just going to go back and forth and get that sort of squared up. And there's my, whatever you want to call this thing, all finished, machined and assembled and all that sort of thing. So as I showed you, I've just recessed those split pins a little bit. I've squared up the inside of that cavity with a file. Probably not necessary really when you think about it, because it's a round rod, but it looked a bit better with that. And then I've gone along and put a bit of a chamfer on there, and that's just because when that rod is in there and it's right at its extreme, if that was a sharp corner, it'd touch it. So I've just got a little bit of relief there, and that should be fine. So there's that bit. All I've got to do now is the paddle and a few cotters and things like that, and I should be done. But I'm running out of time now, so thanks for watching. See you for the next one.